So you should all now see my screen, hopefully. And the reason behind this presentation today is that the more I talk to people and hear the gloomy news that there is around about, well, certainly the people's emergency briefings of saying that all is not well, then I figure we need to be able to counter it with some stuff that is working. So I've taken a look. Most of this involves the United Kingdom, but some of it's a bit wider. And hopefully there'll be some ideas that will be appealing to the smaller communities like a town or a community or a parish council. So technology is moving faster than it's ever moved before at the moment, and there have been some breakthroughs in these various areas. And I thought I'd just mention them so that you would at least be familiar with the idea. I don't know that any of it's actually arriving yet, or a lot of it is, but whether it's applicable to you is entirely up to, you can tell me. But these are the areas I'm concentrating on today. So in the energy transition breakthroughs, we're seeing big jumps in the effectiveness of things. So the effectiveness of the solar cells at 33%. I think they're up to 30 now in the ones that are actually being produced, but that's so far ahead of where things were when they started that I've got a couple of people who are ripping down their original installation of solar cells and putting in new ones because they get so much more bang for the buck. So this business of the rooftop generation improving sharply has in fact been so good that people are replacing their original installations, even though they haven't reached their 25-year life or whatever. And of course, the more solar generation that we have, the more we need to store stuff for those days when the sun isn't going to be shining. And the good news again here is that it's getting vast improvement. So the original battery packs, if you will, that you tend to put on your house are lithium ion, but they're moving now more to sodium ion, which is heavier and bulkier, but for the amounts of storage that you need for towns or villages or even just big power plants is so huge that the size and the weight doesn't matter. You're going to be you're not going to be moving this stuff once you've got it. So it doesn't really matter. What you're really looking for is the efficiency of the systems, and they are wonderfully improving. And then for all those people who keep saying the United Kingdom is busy disappearing from the world in terms of um, a major power, we are way ahead of others in all sorts of areas. And one of them is these offshore wind turbines. So what we're seeing here, the photograph I've got you, is flow, which is what the University of Plymouth is calling their work, um, which is basically floating offshore wind. But these turbines are enable wind turbines to be put up in the ocean in much deeper areas than you put before. So the North Sea, by and large, tends to be fairly shallow. And so much of our stuff in the North Sea is fixed static wind turbines. But now that this technology is really being developed and is put into place, we're moving into deeper waters. So the further offshore you are, the more you ease the pressure on people who don't like the signs of wind turbines. But also you tend to get the stronger winds away from the coast as an average. So there's advantages in having these, and we are way ahead of many other places in the development of them. So that was good news. Um, I thought this would be really interesting for people to see what a difference there is. So I'm taking the year 2000 as the baseline. Renewables
Oh,
formed about 2% of our overall electricity generation. And last year, they became firmly entrenched as more than 50% of our electricity is now coming from renewables, which is, I think, staggering. So most of that is wind power, but we are seeing, because of those solar cell developments, we are seeing an ever increasing contribution from solar. The what has been replaced are the coal-powered fire stations. So we've gone from 40% of our power being delivered by coal at the start of the century to now a quarter of the way through, there's none. Of course, that may change if Mr. Trump continues to upset the oil supply, but you never know. Um, and those figures I've been giving you on the left are for the electricity generation, but renewables now actually count for 18% of our total energy use. So all the power that we use completely in the UK now, nearly a fifth of it comes from renewables, which I think is staggering. And I put a note down the bottom because I was given this fact in the meeting I was at just before I started this one. And every year, the demand for electricity goes up and up and up, particularly at the moment, because there's this huge demand for data centers. And AI data centers consume a lot more power than necessary before. So there's a major increase in the amount of electricity being demanded. But last year, the increase in renewable energy was greater than the demand for more energy. So we are gradually closing the gap. So a lot of that, of course, is due to China. China has got the most enormous investment into renewable energy. But overall, as a world, we are making progress. Okay, the pictures I got here are really just to show people the impact on housing. So on the top right picture, you've got sort of a pretty new air heat pump, um, more or less sort of not noticeable. People can travel around it. And on the bottom picture, you've got what happens when you start mixing timber with other materials. You get wonderfully graceful buildings which are not using, what's the word I'm looking for, haven't involved toxic fuels to create them. I'm not sure that applies to the glass that we're looking at, but all the structure of the building is hybrid timber. So just moving ahead. And I always thought this was a wonderful idea. So in the labs in MIT in Boston, they are creating concrete that can store electricity. And you think of it as a battery, if you will, although the technical term is a supercapacitor. So the electricity is held, or you can feed it into the concrete. Um, and the amount of concrete you need to power a house for a day is nowadays the size of the basement wall. Now that's 5 cubic meters. Um, 2 years ago, when MIT started this, they needed 45 cubic meters to do the same storage of power. But they now reduced that by a factor of 8, which I think is, or even 9. Sorry, so making huge progress. Um, you can't fix existing concrete. You can't go back and do a retrospective repair, if you will. But any new building, and there are lots and lots and lots of them are going up, can use this new concrete. And therefore, the building itself is a storage for the electricity that the building itself will be using. I think that's fascinating news. Lots of progress in food and agriculture, which we're all very interested in. And we've had a couple of lectures about this recently because the UK imports 40% of its food requirements. And I think sort of world events are showing that that is dangerous. If anything, we need to increase our own production, um, and we need to get better at using fewer pesticides, fewer fertilizers, and increasing the productivity. So the first group about the precision agriculture is using AI drones. And I think when we say drones, we tend to think of the helicopter type, but in fact, there are plenty of the ones like the picture in the bottom right of drones cheerfully going along, producing the most beautiful, whatever they are. I originally thought they were lettuces, but when I look at them a bit more closely, they aren't. However, in structures like this or installations like this, you're getting a huge amount more productivity. Plus, you're getting lot smaller use of um, pesticides and fertilizer. In fact, you're using no fertilizer at all. Um, Particularly if you're helping with seaweed, which itself is a source of energy for soil. Um, it grows very quickly. If you leave it there, it just captures lots of carbon. And there are now seaweed farms all over places with fjords. So Norway is big, but also, too much to my surprise, the last time I was up in the Faroes, they've started building seaweed farms where they stretch ropes through the water from one side of a fjord to the other, and then they can just haul it in when the kelp, most of it, has had chance to grow, and then they harvest it, move on to the next one. Um, we've had a couple of lectures recently about the effect of worms on increasing the productivity of the soil. Again, a nice, easy, simple, natural way of making us more productive. So we're moving ahead in agriculture, and good news. I was very surprised to see that AI is a really big help nowadays because it's sort of lots of people get nervous when they hear about AI. But I thought that it was interesting to see how they're doing it. So I think some people will be familiar with the term digital twin, but for those of you who are not, digital twin is a production, if you will, in a computer of everything about your environment. So it reproduces the hills, it reproduces the rivers, the roads, the electricity consumption, and everything. So then you can say, so what happens if it rains solidly for 3 days? And it'll tell you on the digital twin where the floods are going to happen, when they're going to start, and therefore who are the people that need to be warned and what steps need to be taken. So that's using it for flood forecasting, which you can see all the other uses that they're putting AI to in the top left corner. And then in the right side, the flood prediction advantages, which I thought would be particularly interesting to people here. Some of the people on the call will be in areas that are prone to flooding, and therefore you might like to know that there's a lot of development going on, which can do a much better job in the future. Carbon removal is, what's the word, controversial, because at the moment it doesn't really work. The amount of energy that you have to use to suck carbon out of the air and sequester it somewhere um, in the carbon capture technique is greater than the value of what you're doing. So it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's a work in progress. But again, I thought that it would be interesting to show that there are places which have built large carbon capture facilities for taking carbon monoxide out of the atmosphere and CO2 and sequestering it so that it is gradually being removed. At the moment, of course, particularly when you've got wars and so forth generating huge amounts of smoke and dust and everything else, we're losing the battle of reducing the amount of carbon that we're throwing into the atmosphere. But there are plans like this to try and turn that around. So again, I thought it was interesting that there are places which are obviously spending a lot of money taking the ideas out of the lab and putting them into practice in reality to see what they need to learn about scaling up in future. I thought, again, there's another example here of taking the 21st century as a baseline. If you bought an electric vehicle back in the year 2000, you wouldn't expect it to go more than 50 or 90 miles on a complete charge. And that generated a lot of range anxiety, I think was the word that they used. And certainly I bought a 2015 Nissan Leaf a couple of years ago. So it's already 10 years old. And it would not take more than 70 miles in its battery. So you could charge it overnight, you could get as much as you liked in there, but you'd still only get 70 miles out of it, which is fine if you happen to live on a small island, not so good if you're on the mainland. But I think the range anxiety nowadays has disappeared because the average is 325 miles, and there are lots of cars out there now that will do more than 500 miles on a tank full, which is more than you can get in the vast majority of petrol-driven cars. So basically, range anxiety is a non-existent concern now for people who buy new cars. Again, lots of developments. The speed at which you can charge nowadays is frightening. In the time it takes you to go and have a cup of coffee in a service station, you can charge your batteries to at least 80% of what you need. So if you're not happy with the 325 miles that you're getting and you need to take a break, that will give you enough time to recharge the battery. So it's almost like having the convenience of petrol in your car in terms of the range you can get and the speed of refilling. And it keeps on improving. And I put a picture here of an aircraft, the Gulfstream, that has just finished a major test of methanol in the fuel and concluded that it works. That it actually, you get a range improvement and you get much less in the way of carbon generation. Not many people, I think, are sure of ammonia as as an aviation fuel. But actually, ammonia produces more hydrogen when you change it from its liquid state to its gaseous state than hydrogen itself, which is fascinating. So again, we're still in the early days, but there is a lot of work going on to the level of actually sticking a new engine on an aircraft and flying it around to see what happens. And the results, as far as the sulfur content of the fuel emissions here, have been very positive. So community microgrids is what I'm focusing on here, that you've probably all heard the stories of how long it takes to get your wind turbine or whatever it is that you've got connected up to the grid, and your community energy center connected to the grid. And they're working now on ways around that. So a community microgrid means that you can keep all the power that you generate in your community, and you can cut down the demand on the main grid, and you don't need to connect to the main grid to provide that power. So again, this is more of a lab thing at the moment. I'm not sure that anybody has actually put this into practice, but I know there's a lot of people working on this. So basically, the power you generate locally can be used locally, and can reduce the amount of power that you're taking from the main grid, and you don't have the delay of having to connect to the grid per se to implement it. So it's a big time savings. I think the local DNO probably has to upgrade their sub-unit that supplies this area, but that's much of a less task than upgrading the entire grid. So we're just showing different ways of generating electricity in the first place. So you've got biopower, you've got wind power, you've got solar power, and then the advantages of how you can distribute it. It's also, I thought, fun to notice that electric vehicles are being touted as a supply of electricity when the demand is high. So all those cars which are sitting in your car park or your driveway, they're looking at ways of including them as part of the battery overall storage situation so as to reduce the demand of electricity from the grid. Ditto your home energy system, the car can sort of put energy into it as well as taking energy from it. Works both ways. So the big change that I thought was not really in any one technology, but it's the idea of bringing all these things together. So if you're generating locally from your community energy center, whether it be a wind turbine or whether it be solar power or whatever, and you're using local storage, the batteries that we've been looking at, and you've improved your food resilience, um, and you're tying all this together and you're getting people to pick out, then that is looking like the way it's going to go. So if you're a small town, you might have what's being called a small modular reactor. Each town has a nuclear reactor of its own. Sounds frightening, but they're incredibly safe. They don't take anything like the time that it takes to build a big power station. And because they're modular, once you've got one module past all the regulatory requirements, then anything built to that same standard is going to pass as well. So much more able to be put into small areas much more quickly. So advantageous. Um, just to end what was meant to be a very, what's the word, positive discussion, um, the consideration for what is going to be needed to change all this in the future is no longer the technology. The technology is in place. It's coming out of the lab. The improvements that they're seeing in the solar power, the solar cells, the cost of electricity from wind turbines is now less than fossil fuel um, electricity. The question now is more persuading the necessary powers to get on with it. So the technology is in place. We do have the technology to make all this happen. The question is more a bit like the People's Emergency Briefing is suggesting you've got to get the message across to those people making decisions that affect all of us. So that, and of course, it's all the usual battles against the vested interests. So the national grid may not be happy with you saying we don't need a giant central system. Of course, we need what we've got because that's how we get power from one end of the country to the other. But and getting more could be probably done by a smart grid rather than rebuilding giant electricity distribution systems. And I think people are probably in the way more than the technology nowadays. So hopefully the overall feeling I can give you is that things are getting better in terms of the technology involved with climate change. And much more nowadays, we need to concentrate, focus on doing things locally because it does make a difference. And the more that we can do locally, then the less is the demand nationally. And because national things will travel more slowly than local things, then hopefully we'll be speeding up our greenery, if you will. Right, that's hopefully where we are. Where am I going to go back to here? There. Sorry, stop sharing. And I'm wide open for thoughts, questions, abuse, insults. Feel free. And Sue, I hope that if you are looking for ideas for battle, then if you're not a community energy center, then I think you might want to think about that. Because everything else, if your electricity is generated locally and it's stored locally and you're supplying power to your farmers and your agriculture and everything else, and then they're all going to be looking at becoming more efficient. You know, one of our single most, we pay more for energy than nearly any other country at the moment. And anything we can do to reduce that is going to help everyone's productivity and efficiency. So there's a thought. Stuart, you got your hand up first away.
Yeah, I would just like to thank you for
Yeah.
putting a more positive spin on things than we're normally used to. I would make a few comments. Despite everything we've done so far, the Keeling curve is still rising.
Yeah.
Uh, Temperatures are still going up, and we need to do a lot more, a lot quicker. Um, I think CO2 removal is going to be necessary in the future. But I think rather than investing billions in it right now, that billions ought to be going into more renewables and reducing CO2 emissions. Um, on the food side, I think you should mention Solar Foods, who are making proteins from uh, basically sunlight and water, um,
Can
using
you expand on
bacteria.
that, Stuart? So what's involved?
There's a fermentation chamber. They've got bacteria which actually feed on hydrogen, using hydrogen as their basic food source. They'll use the carbon from the atmosphere, CO2, combined with the oxygen and the hydrogen to make the hydrocarbons, which go on to make proteins. Nitrogen, obviously, from the environment. And the only real input is electricity to produce the hydrogen in the first place, water and nitrogen from the atmosphere, and the fermentation. And they make a protein they're calling soline, which can be made into a flour to make pancakes, make bread, do this, that, and the other. It's licensed for human consumption, primarily in Singapore, where they make a very nice ice cream with it, apparently. And it's getting recognition in the States. It's not fully licensed, but they have a category of food where it's classed as generally considered safe. So it can start to be used.
Did you say it was available here?
I haven't seen it in this country. Let's say Singapore have fully licensed it. They're trying to get it properly licensed in America, and it's got the halfway stage, which is generally considered safe.
I think that's fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Stuart. Good.
I've got a few more points, but I'll save them for later.
Okay. Gary, now's your chance to tell us you got an ALC award.
No, I wouldn't do that. No, no. I was actually going to show you my poster, which I just generated with AI for our volunteers group, just to show you the positive things that AI can do for you. It's amazing
Yeah.
incredible what they can do. I've got no design bone in my body, but that's what I can do. Just, typing a few commands into a computer, that's what it does for you. I just thought there was a few things that I've written down, Graham, that I thought were worth mentioning as well, positive things. So there's biodiversity net gain. So that's a recent thing that's
Yeah, that's a very good thing. I agree.
yeah, and also the rolling out of food waste across the country. Now that's meant to be sort of like everywhere supposed to be managing their food waste. Balcony solar. That's a new thing.
Balcony solar.
Yeah. So that's
So this is for apartments and things.
yeah, well, it's for anybody really, but you can buy a solar panel off the shelf and plug it into your electricity supply. And it
Yes, these are the ones from Aldi and Lidl, aren't they? The
yeah,
sort
yeah,
of
it's all
£40 things, but they're very
£400.
flexible. It's more like a rubber mat.
Yeah, £400.
Yes.
But it's actually more like a actual standalone solar panel, not like a rubber mat, as far as I understand it. So it's like, it's a bit of kit, but you can just plug it into your socket, and it'll start, using solar power for your electricity supply.
Oh, that's right. It's got a built-in inverter.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
hopefully you won't need things like planning permission, all that kind of thing. So it'll just, you plug and play kind of thing. So
That's
that's
very
something.
useful. Yeah, thanks, Gary. It's good like that.
Yeah, it might be coming along soon. I mentioned the housing regulations that hopefully they're going to roll out soon, that solar will be required on all housing, although that's still to come. And also things like rewilding, of course, beavers, red kites, that kind of things. Also lots of other good news stories there I thought worth mentioning.
I was up in Scotland last week and went to the Highland Wildlife Centre, where they are indeed introducing or reintroducing red kites. Much to my astonishment, they're also reintroducing red pandas, which eat bamboo like the larger pandas. And I just wondered how much of that there is up in Scotland. That question didn't arise, but thank you very much. That's good, Gary. You got more points? No. Anybody else want to, before we go back to Stuart?
I,
No.
I will.
Okay, go for it.
Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to put my hand up and do everything. So, yeah, I'm also really grateful. There are lots of things I learned. I've been scribbling away like mad because I didn't know lots of the things that you've talked about. And that's really useful. There always seems to be, it's more comments really, that balance between whose job is it? Is it the individual who's meant to change and do their lifestyle, etc., or is it the government or the legislators who are meant to sort this problem out, or technology is meant to sort it out? And I think that we on this call and also talking about decision makers, it's a combination of those. But for individuals to change, like not flying anymore, is a really hard ask because we flipping like going and seeing other places. And I've had some fun times. And you're suddenly expecting young people not to want to do that when we did if we could because we didn't know any different.
But if they can improve the fuel so it isn't creating more problems for the atmosphere,
Yeah.
then that
So,
would solve your problem.
yeah, but it is that we have got the bottom line is there is a lot of people to cater for, and expectations are a lot higher than say generations in the past. So at a local level, certainly. So I'm part of a project. You said the energy. I'm part of a project called Battle Solar Town. I think I might have mentioned it before. And we're trying to get solar or increase the amount of solar that is produced and used in Battle. And I think the technology talking about producing it locally and keeping it locally will make such a huge
A
difference.
huge difference. I agree. Yeah.
That and that will, but it is the decision makers who often don't want things to change because of, we know that's safe and we know that works, and it's quite hard to get the decision makers on board with the new way to go, etc. So I suppose I think the bit that really I'd like to personally tackle is like the food and agriculture, and getting more focus in producing locally, etc., making it more local. And but I'm not quite sure how to tackle that. I'm driveling on here, but I'd like to do more other
Did
than
you see did you see the earlier sessions on market gardens and worms, Sue?
I did see the worms one, but I didn't see the market garden one.
I thought that was of great appeal to people, certainly like in your position, where the lady who runs the garlic farm in the Isle of Wight, which is 100 acres of land that is producing garlic, so they're in quite a sizable way, has been so surprised by two things. One was the exhausted state of the soil
Yeah,
that she's found in the Isle of Wight, that people have been drawing on it for centuries, and it's high time it needs refreshing. And the second was that discovery coincided with the fact that a local couple started the worm factory just
yeah,
down the road, and she bought one of their first products and put it onto the garlic farm and found that it made such a huge difference, something like a 30% jump in their productivity, that they started using the same thing now on their organic farm. So her brother-in-law runs the organic side of life, and he was actually quite fascinated to talk to her about how you take your cattle, for instance, or your goats from being protected by injections and so forth, and somehow you have to say we're going to convert to no injections, and that the land has got to be clean as well. So you're not being polluted by next door neighbors and that sort of thing. So major issues. But having persevered, they now find that their cattle and their goats are far more happy and productive than they were before they started. And she has been so impressed by the way the worms have made a difference to her land that she's now saying, okay, I'm going to devote my heart's desire is going to be to produce a market garden. And she's looking into non-dig technology because the soil, you don't want to use it. And then she's using the tea from the worms to make the soil that she's creating much more productive. And she's learning all about how, market gardening is bringing local food resilience and is actually hugely popular with the people that are buying it. And she feels that she can keep the costs down to much the same as sort of supermarket prices, which I think is a major breakthrough. So it's just that if are looking to make a difference, then market gardening is possibly one to look at because people like using nature. They like being with nature. They like getting out into the garden. They like the increase in biodiversity that comes because you've converted more of the land around you to producing plants and flowers and things. And so it all goes. It's all a big sort of circularity nowadays, isn't it?
How do you think, thank you, how do you think we can judge success in in a small community? And this is really for everybody, like our community, a new group is just starting a Sunday market once a month in our town, which is good. And but how can we judge that we are more resilient for food locally? I'm racking my brain. Somebody else might have an idea. How can we judge success?
I think you need a baseline, don't you?
Yeah.
How can you start with if you don't know where you are at the moment? And I suspect you can do it by measuring how much your local supermarkets turn over and therefore and where their supplies come from. So, some of the supermarkets will bring their local lettuces and radishes and things from the local suppliers, but others will truck it in from the other side of the country. And I imagine that you're going to have to be friendly with the local supermarket manager to find out. I can't believe that Tesco themselves are going to let you know. But it's a good point, Sue, because you need to know how do you measure it? Do you just
Yeah.
see it in the attendance of school days from children? They're less sick than they used to be. And there are always umpteen variable inputs into these things. Is
Yeah.
really one single item that you can say this caused that. But I think if you overall you want to see if you can reduce the number of truckloads of vegetables brought into the town, then maybe things are going well.
Yeah. Okay. I
It
think
is, I
it
agree.
would
It's a
be
very, very interesting question.
a really useful session to
Start measuring. Yeah.
yeah, and hear other people's ideas, oh, there's so many factors, but
Well, I think that one of the difficult things to measure is well-being.
yes,
The more people are out doing their allotments or their gardens or planting trees, the better they feel. But how do you measure that? I think
of
that's
course.
tricky.
Thank you.
There has been some sort of science studies on children playing in sand pits, which are ordinary sand pits, or they've been inoculated with high quality soils, and they found the ones who are exposed to the soils have much better immune
Oh
systems,
yeah.
less allergies, less time off sick, all sorts of benefits from playing around in nature. Might be worth looking at something like that to see how they did it.
Mm.
Very interesting. Yes.
Good.
Dirt is good for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and getting your hands dirty is good for you.
Oh, here we are. Ashdown co-benefits toolkit.
Hello, Belinda. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got stuck in traffic, so I've missed I've missed most of this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But
Well,
yeah, I
good to
think
see
this
you.
is I think this is a huge challenge for us, kind of involved in all this, is how do we demonstrate the benefits? And it's a really, really good question because there are lots of stories about how, for example, when a village gets together to put solar panels on the village hall and insulate it and get heat pumps, or any of those things, then other people get interested. It brings the costs of running the village hall down. It makes it a friendly, warm, welcoming space. Other people get involved, and so more of the community are using it. So it's very difficult to kind of measure that additional, um, you know, sort of health and well-being and sort of reduction of social isolation and improvement in community cohesion. But the Ashton co-benefits toolkit, I haven't looked at it recently, because they started to do quite a lot of international projects. But it does have some quite good ideas of the sort of things that you can measure when you're looking at the sort of additional things. It's relatively easy to make an estimate for the reduction in carbon emissions, but much less easy, as we were saying, to measure the health and well-being benefits. But they have got some sort of stories and examples there.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, I definitely think that's our big challenge, isn't it? It's making sure, because we've got so much in the, in politics and in the press about net stupid zero and all of that anti stuff. That's what, possibly. I mean, I've sensed around here that a lot of town and parishes who were all quite keen, and there was a political consensus on, if you like, doing the right thing and reducing our emissions, blah, blah, blah. That's kind of gone. And as councillors tend to be quite risk aversive, and if they think that people out there don't want them to be doing this because they believe in what they read in the papers, but actually on the doorstep, and all the research is showing that the majority of people, including reform voters, do want things to be done, and they do recognise that climate change is a problem, and surface water flooding is going to increase, and we're having more, climate extremes. People do get that and do want decision makers to do more, but decision makers don't necessarily see and feel that, so they tend to be sort of risk aversive. So yeah, the more of the good news stories we can get out there, the better. So I'll have to watch this on record on the catch
Yep.
now.
I'll stick it up there this afternoon. Yeah, thank you. Stuart, we're going to come back to you as the owner of more questions.
Well, some of the comments. I would like to say that sodium-ion batteries are available domestically now. There's a company in Cambridge that are using them as their usual installed battery.
Are they a lot larger?
I haven't seen one in person, but looking at their advertising photographs, not hugely.
Not hugely. That's very interesting. Right.
And obviously
cheaper?
they're safer. They're still more expensive than the lithium ion, but they've only just started making them. So as the quantities improve and this, that, and the other,
Yeah.
they
That's
reckon they'll
fascinating.
come down to about half the price of lithium.
A lot more lithium, sorry, a lot more sodium around than there is lithium. And
A hell of a lot more.
nothing as
And
like
the Chinese are using grid scale sodium ion batteries. And I'm currently investigating developing a small solar farm. And I would certainly opt for sodium ion batteries rather than lithium. Any sort of static application.
Yep.
So they are coming along. It was my understanding that the UK's total energy consumption for electricity is less than 20%. You seem to be quoting 50%.
No, I think I was saying that the energy generation of just pure energy is from renewables is now more than 50%.
Yeah, that is just from electricity.
Yes. So
Yeah.
as a total of our overall use, I think I said it was close to, it's about 18% at the moment, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd
Yeah.
agree with that.
Um, so
So
yes,
we've got a long way to go to electrify everything.
yes.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I've become much more um, aware myself since I got an electric car, just of how many petrol pollutants there are around. You know,
Yeah. I feel quite aggrieved getting into petrol cars nowadays.
yep.
Having driven the EV, you think how noisy they are. Oh, that stink. And
It's just, it makes you wonder why we like them in the first place.
yeah,
No, that's something
but
that,
certainly the V2G technology. I gather the major problem there is getting the manufacturers of the various components to agree on a standard. And it depends whether you use the inverter charger in the car or the one on the house sort of side.
yep.
And there's still got quite a few things to work out, but I think that would be a real sort of game changer. I mean, I'm sitting there is, I don't know, 60, 70 kilowatt hours battery storage,
Yes.
which at the moment is fully
Multiply that by
charged.
umpteen million cars. Yes, it's a
Yeah.
lot. It is huge. I agree.
And the other thing, you seem to be promoting BECS, which I gather has been discredited now.
I think I said it's a controversial subject that
Yes.
at the moment the charges are that it uses more energy and creates more mess than it solves.
Yes.
It's like everything else. It's a work in progress. I think that they believe that it's heading in the right direction.
Oh, okay. That's not what I've heard, but
Well,
as you say, controversial.
yes, that's right.
And I think it was Climeworks factory that we were showing for the carbon capture and storage.
Yes,
I think they're aiming for something like 1 million tons a year capture.
as big as that. Wow.
Um, but I think that's a few years off yet. Their main site is in Iceland because they've got loads and loads of free green energy.
Yes, but we're still
Uh,
talking just in thousands of tons there, aren't we?
yes,
A long way to go up to
which
scale
is a
up.
very small dent in our annual production of, I don't know, 50 billion tons.
Yes, agreed.
But I say, I think in the future we will need that sort of technology if we're going to get back to where we are now.
Yes.
And it's great to see. I've just come from a wind meeting, onshore wind meeting, before this meeting. And the number of people, the amount of expertise, the amount of knowledge is absolutely fantastic. But they still seem to be stymied by planning regulations, grid links up, all this, that, and the other.
Yep.
And I really think we need to get the legislators. The same applies to any sort of community energy. You were talking about sort of small community grids and things. None of that has been really sorted out.
No,
Uh,
it is.
I've been dealing with three different models for how it might work. There's energy local, energy for all. I've forgotten the other people I've been speaking to. But this fact that you can't sell your electricity locally, you can only sell it to the grid. Then you need a PPA with your grid supplier, and you get paid peanuts for the amount you generate. So it makes the project not financially viable. So people won't invest. All these sort of problems.
Yeah, what I was trying to point out was that the technology is there. The issue
Yeah.
is now more overcoming the bureaucratic and political opposition,
Yes.
of which there is no small amount. Sue, you got your hand up.
Yeah, just the bit that we haven't come up with solutions yet is the poor soil quality that you mentioned, and have how can we work on that as a community level?
Oh, I think the worm farms will do the job.
Yeah, but so I was all enthusiastic having seen the worm presentation, and how can that be spread, UK wide, that it becomes the norm, because that's what you want it to do, to become.
I think we've got to increase our amount of regenerative agriculture.
Yes.
Most of our land is agricultural, and I think few of our farmers are using regenerative sort of techniques.
But on this,
Again,
I don't know, the network, it feels like, how do you ever reach the farming network? Are people working with the farming network? Because I
Yes.
haven't a clue how to talk to our local farmers, etc.
If you were
Very
to look me up,
separate. Pardon?
you said you were going to look me up. I
Yeah.
would look at the Sustainable Uttlesford website.
The what? Sustainable where?
Uttlesford.
Ucklesford.
Uttle. Uttlelesford.
Yeah.
It's an area in North Essex, which
Right.
is, I think, due to disappear. But we are linked in with 2 farm clusters, and farm clusters seem to be quite a big sort of national organization. And through the farming cluster, you would hopefully get 1 or 2 farmers to start regen. They can teach the others all about it, what the pitfalls are, what the benefits are. But I think that is a great way forward for soil management. And obviously, as soil conditions improve, the amount of carbon they sequester goes up, as well as the fertility.
Could I just
Thank
add
you.
something?
Hello, Jenny. Yes.
Yes, just like to add 2 things. Firstly, as you're in battle,
Hello.
I've sent you a private chat message, but this is separate. You might like to contact Edin, the Sussex peasant, who brings local food to multiple places in the area, including where I live, because he works with a range of farmers, including regenerative farmers, and by popular demand, he now has a big blackboard up at his market stalls explaining which type of agriculture the products, each type of vegetable and meat comes from, and he's very keen on regenerative farming and has farmers he works with, some of whom are in far, far East Sussex or even further. The other thing is that a lot of groups have shown the film The 6 Inches of Soil,
Yeah.
and I understand that in some areas that's being shown to farmers rather than just random public and green group people. So that's another way in that people are using specifically.
What we're doing here, Sue, is after the people's emergency briefing, we're having a follow-up session of what do people want to do about it. And the local farmers are all being invited to that.
Oh, that's a good
Whether
one.
they show up or not, of course, we don't know, but it only takes one. And we do have a regenerative farm in the area, which helps a great deal.
Yeah.
Well, I was listening to Jeremy Clarkson by chance, and he is trialing regen agriculture on his farm.
Oh, well, that will have a huge effect. And
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of farmers will pay attention to him because he's just such a character.
Yes. Yeah, I thought that was good news.
Very good news. Belinda.
Yeah, we've so a couple of things. One is that Dorset Council owns a number of county farms, and they're working with their farm cluster gradually to, obviously they have sort of different length contracts and rental agreements with sort of tenant farmers, but as the contracts change, then the council is kind of insisting on it, that the farms being farmed in a regenerative way, or improving biodiversity, etc., etc. And one of the things that we did as a local river group Most of the problems in our little river are just the sewage treatment works. But so compared to most river catchments, we don't have much in the way of agriculture. But those areas that we do have, they managed to get, and I can't remember which way around it, we managed to get, by working with the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group, managed to get funding for them to come in to do 2 farm surveys per farm. So it wasn't costing the farmer anything to advise them on what they could do to improve their sort of practices to stop polluting the river. And the way that they reached those farmers was by having a farmer's breakfast with FWAG and with various other local farmers so that they weren't just sort of turning up, like not knowing anyone. So, yeah, it's definitely finding the sort of trusted messenger as well as ideally, providing enabling some sort of funding. So those are all sort of things worth looking into. It's been surprisingly successful because the Environment Agency had been sort of going round and issuing them warnings and fining them, etc., etc. And it wasn't having any effect because they didn't really know how to make things, how to improve the sewage pollution. But having this sort of cluster, getting people together and having the funding for them to do the professional surveys and provide the guidance. And there's also funding for them to put in the changes needed. I can't remember the details, but it's been surprisingly, we weren't sure how it was going to go, but they've been surprisingly interested and pleased with the way it's gone. These dairy farmers.
Great. Does anybody else have any more questions, please, that they'd like to know? Oh, the flags. Yes, that looks great. Well, thank you very much for your inputs. Some very good stuff today. Much appreciated. Thank you, Stuart, for your time. Sue, look forward to seeing how things go in battle. Which I would love to know which is going to be your chosen sort of target for the year for the town.
Shall I tell you what I'm thinking?
Yes.
Well, I'm back to basics. I'm sort of the farmer is more an interest thing. Is trying to get 100 new log piles for the residents to create a new log pile and send in the photo. That's
For the bugs and so forth.
Yeah.
The bug farms, yes.
Yeah.
All
Because
right.
we want gardens and, little green areas. That's the sort of town we are. There isn't much anything big. Anyway, that was my idea. I was going to sound out our local wildlife trust to see what they thought that was a good idea, or they might have a better idea.
I think they'd be delighted.
I'd be worried that they'd get burned.
You have to have what do you mean? Who said that?
Gary.
Gary.
Log burners, Sue. If we put piles of logs anywhere, we have to worry about local residents coming along and collecting them and putting them in their wood burners. So
I'm mainly talking about, we've got some in open spaces, but okay, twigs and mixture. It doesn't have to be the perfect wood burning log. But
No, in fact, the ones I've seen that we've built recently have been anything but. A lot of them are coming out of used pallets, worn out pallets, which again I suppose are good for burning, but so far nobody has attacked them.
I thought pallets weren't good for wood burners because of the preservative chemicals which are injected into them.
Well, all the more reason for them to be good, for the bugs to break them down and render their chemicals useless.
Our town council and now the Turnlime Green Environmental Group in Lyme Regis have been putting up bird boxes and bug hotels, and there hasn't been any issue at all with anyone trying to demolish them. I think they're mostly kind of like rotting rotting wood and
Yeah.
things that would be decomposing naturally. It's just kind of accelerating the process.
Okay. Well, good ideas both. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Anybody else?
Sorry, Jenny, I haven't managed to reply to you. I'll look you up.
All right. Thank you all so much for your time, and look forward to whatever we're going to come up with for next week. But I don't know yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Graham.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks
everybody.
very much.
Bye.
Bye bye.